persecution, the untold story of global persecution of the Christian community.
Okay, thanks so much. And thanks to the Breitbart team. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak here today. I'm going to be talking about soft power, so I'm switching gears a little bit. Religious persecution is the gravest human rights crisis of our day. Christians are, as a group, the most persecuted out of sheer numbers across the world. This means they're being killed, tortured, and imprisoned, and eradicated in exile, sent into exile for their beliefs. Our new book, Persecuted, shows that this is happening in three types of countries. Those are the remnant communist countries, like North Korea and China, some nationalist countries, like Burma, Eritrea, and then in the Muslim world. And I'd really like to turn my attention today, your attention today, to what is happening in the Muslim world, where Islamism is on the rise, because persecution there is intensifying and it's spreading. Last week alone, we saw in Libya a Coptic Christian from Egypt tortured to death. 50 of his co-religionists were imprisoned and some are still there. In Iran, 5 Christians are being put on trial this week. An American cleric of Iranian birth is also in prison there. He was almost put to death and may still be. In Pakistan, a Christian village was attacked in a pogrom brought about through a rumor that someone in the village had committed blasphemy against the Islamic prophet Muhammad. And this is a repeated pattern in Pakistan. There's a mother of 5, Asia Bibi, now on death row. She's been there for several years for a rumor of having blasphemed. In Nigeria, the Christians there are bracing for Easter in 2 weeks, because last Easter, Boko Haram, which is a radical Islamic group, whose name means Western education is prohibited, bombed their churches full of worshipers. In Egypt, of course, Copts continue to stream out of the country ever since they had a Muslim Brotherhood president and an Islamist constitution adopted there. There are also Christians in prison, including for their beliefs, including a mother and her 5 children who just got a 15-year sentence for reconverting to Christianity. She had been a Christian, born a Christian, converted to Islam to marry a Muslim man, as is required, and then when he died, she tried to reconvert back. They were just given 15-year sentences for that. In Iraq, there are very few Christians left because, and Iraq is one of the largest remaining populations of Christians in the Middle East, with the Copts being the largest in Egypt, and then Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. They're the only substantial numbers of Christians left in the Middle East. And they have been practically eradicated over the last 10 years. 2/3 of them have left after 70 of their churches were bombed, and they suffered many other atrocities. This is affecting Christians across the board in the Muslim world, both very old churches, very ancient churches, 2,000-year-old churches, like the Copts, like the Assyrians, and it's also happening to the new Christians, the converts. It's happening to Orthodox, Catholics, evangelicals, Protestants across the board of all faith traditions. It's also happening, this persecution, to other small minorities. They are sharing the same faith. So the Christians may be the largest in many of these countries, but the smaller minorities, the Mandeans, the Yazidis, the Baha'is, are all sharing the same faith. And the few Jews that are left in the Muslim world. There are not many. In fact, my colleague Gilbert just published a book called Saturday People, Sunday People, drawing the comparison that Jews have already been driven out over the last couple decades of the Arab world. Now it's the Christians' turns, and some Christians there are making that link as well. Also, moderate and reformist Muslims are also being persecuted, and I focused a lot on this in my prior book, came out in 2011, called Silenced, which is about the pattern of blasphemy and apostasy laws, codes in the Muslim world. In Saudi Arabia this week, we saw a 10-year sentence being handed down to two advocates of human rights there. But this isn't just a human rights issue. Of course, it's our highest national ideal to have this as a human rights issue, and to have human rights issues as part of our foreign policy. It's also a national security issue. The Pew Research Center has made the link that those countries that repress religion is directly correlated to those countries that are unstable and present a threat to peace. The State Department, under a law passed by Congress about 10 years ago, is required to make a list of the world's worst persecutors. It's called Countries of Particular Concern, CPC. If you overlay that on the CPC list with the threats to our national security, it really is a great predictor. On that list, you have North Korea, China, Iran, Sudan, and so forth. Christians are the moderators in this part of the world. They don't believe that Western education is a sin. They don't want to see Sharia coerced by the state. They are not jihadists. It is in our interest that these groups and other minorities stay in the Middle East, stay in the Muslim world. Really, what we're seeing now in our lifetime, in our generation, for the first time in history, of the Middle East becoming, the Muslim Middle East becoming totally Islamicized.
We have to jump to the next one. We'll come back. But one part. How Christianity, the cradle of Christianity is the Middle East. How close is Christianity to being eradicated in the Middle East?
Well, it's gone from about 30% of the population 100 years ago to 3% of the population today, and it's rapidly declining. And I wanted to mention that the Obama administration has been silent on this, has been silent on specific acts of persecution in Libya. A church was bombed this week. They were asked at a press briefing yesterday what they've said. They actually answered nothing.
But let me get right about the scale of it. It was how many years ago? It was 30%?
It was 100 years ago.
100 years ago it was 30%. Today it's 3%.
Yeah, and it's rapidly falling.
Okay, we'll have questions and answers. Okay. Anything else in 1 minute?
Well, it's a great issue for conservatives. I mean, this is a grassroots issue. It will resonate with millions and millions of Americans across the country.
Yes, we have
if they knew about it.
We will get the word out.